Well, welcome to the most entertaining weather podcast on your listening device. We are the Stormfront Freaks podcast. Thank you for listening. Our listener base is really growing right now, and we love it, so thank you. This is episode 15. We will be talking with the Weather Channel's winter weather expert, Tom Niziol, and he'll be joining us in our discussion about the challenges of forecasting winter storm snowfall amounts. We'll also give you a little sneak peek of next week's episode's guest at the end of the show as well. But we're going to start off introducing the team with finding out what everybody's drinking. And I'll start off a little bit tonight. I'm happy to tell you guys that, obviously for our listeners, we were unable to give you a show last week due to some technical difficulties. And thankfully, everybody agreed that we were able to come back this week when normally we're only a bi-weekly show and come back. But I was so grateful that Mad Tree Brewing Company here in Cincinnati still had not tapped out of their Pilgrim Pale Ale beer. So I was able to get another growler of this. This is it's a seasonal pale ale with vanilla bean, walnuts, and cranberries.
Wow.
And this is my favorite beer of all time. I'm sad that it's only seasonal. But the reason I really like it so much is the aftertaste. It tastes like Captain Crunch berries.
Oh my God!
It's delicious.
Nice.
It is delicious to the palate. So that's what I'm drinking. MJ, what do you got tonight?
Tonight I have a Grain Belt Northeast, and that of course does not refer to Northeast, but it refers to Northeast Minneapolis. Brewed originally by Grain Belt, a regional brewery, but they went out of business quite a while ago. Now brewed by August Shell Brewery in New Ulm, Minnesota, fairly small. Not quite a microbrew, but sort of a regional brewery. So a lot of stories to the Grain Belt name.
Grain Belt beer comes out here. That's what I remember. All right. Maz, what are you drinking tonight?
I got something to go with your crunch berries. I have a wonderful...
You have a glass of milk?
I had a bunch of cookies earlier, and all I can think is like glass of milk right now. Beer and chocolate just wasn't going to cut it.
We're calling you Santa the rest of the night. All right, Brady, what are you drinking tonight, brother?
Well, here's the deal. I've been on a bit of a diet lately, so I've been trying to keep it light. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go grab a Michelob Ultra. It's only got, I think it's 2.6 carbs, which is amazing. So I'm sitting here drinking. I could drink 5 of these, and that would be the same as drinking a beer. So you know what? I'm drinking my Michelobs.
Good for you, man. You know what? You could drink a couple shots of moonshine and probably still have the same effect without the calories.
Yeah, I feel it.
All right, Dina. Now, granted, Dina just woke up and she's gonna hit the bed once we're off the air here. But Dina, what are you? Are you drinking anything?
Well, I have the sparkling ice, the flavored black raspberry. I love this stuff. It's 0 calories too, Brady. You could try this.
Oh,
but
Dina, that is I love that. I love
it.
It
is. You and I drink a lot of the same things because I was drinking the same beer last week and
kicking the $1 at Kroger Ice. That's good stuff.
Yeah, those are good. Mainly, I think you and I drink the same thing because I was drinking that same beer last week.
We do, yeah. So was I. We were both drinking the same beer.
Yeah, but I needed something to actually drink the whole thing really fast and not be slurring my words or anything. Although I don't think I could slur my words with one of those beers.
Yeah, usually the end of the show is a little bit more difficult to understand. But all right, and then as announced on the last show previously, but with us for the first time as our newest teammate and resident freak, Jen Watson. Jen, what are you drinking tonight?
Yeah. Obviously, the amazing and delicious LaCroix. It's raspberry. It's like sparkling on your tongue. It's refreshing.
So it's the raspberry tonight, huh?
And Brady, it is 0 calories.
Wow. Wait, what about the carbs, though? What about the carbs? That's what matters.
Probably it's 0, 0, 0 across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can do it then.
So you can't taste anything either. You may as well have a sparkling
barely get a hint
glass
of anything.
water. Yeah. Okay. And then last but not least, our guest is joining us with a beverage this evening. Tom Niziol. Tom, what do you got this evening?
Well, I'll tell you, and in honor of the first truly Arctic air getting down into the U.S. over the next week and a half or two, I decided to go with Sam Adams' Cold Snap. I think that's apropos. By the way, it has many, many calories. So.
What kind of a beer is is Cold Snap? What is it?
It's a white ale, so it's one of their seasonal brews, and it's got a nice light taste to it as well.
Very good. Very good. All right.
Cool.
1,000 carbs, yeah. Mine probably does. Mine's got the vanilla bean, walnuts, and cranberries. So,
that sounds amazing.
So that's gonna be crazy. All right, and then hey, the last thing I want to let our listening audience know is our Stormfront Freaks Raw. We just launched that last episode. It's our new Stormfront Freaks Raw on YouTube, and basically we've posted the video version of our show with the breaks and everything you don't hear or see on our edited podcast. So, and I'll tell you that might include unedited language. So we'll warn you about that shit now. But episode,
I'm gonna have to.
You're gonna have to. But episode 15 Raw is available. So just go to our webpage at stormfrontfreaks.com for the links to our YouTube channel. And if you want to watch it, you can watch it as well. So, all right. So let's get to the person that we are all here to talk to tonight and want to listen to. Dina, can you introduce our guest?
Sure. Tonight we've got the honor of having Tom Niziol. He's our winter weather expert at the Weather Channel. And I've known Tom for a long time, but I'm going to give you a little background on him. He worked research when he got out of school. He has over a 30-year career as a National Weather Service forecaster, science officer, meteorologist in charge. He's authored papers on winter weather. He's taught winter weather techniques to forecasters and meteorologists like myself. And I love at the end, like when I was talking to him, he said, he loves the snow. He loves hiking, canoeing, kayaking, cross-country skiing. He takes pictures of snowflakes. And, I was just going to add probably like a nice romantic walk on the ice-covered beach. Nothing better than a nice romantic walk on the beach when it's ice-covered.
There you go. And 50-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh, yes, you can't. And then freezing spray. Don't forget this freezing spray. So welcome, Tom.
No, it's great to be here. I enjoy being with a bunch of other weather geeks, and this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
So Tom, here's what I want to know. So you're this winter weather expert.
Yeah.
When and how did you get that tag?
I especially the term expert. I don't know that anybody really should ever be called an expert, but I was working for the National Weather Service in Buffalo. I did that for 30 years. Absolutely loved it there. Got to study some of the greatest winter weather on Earth, and was all set to finish my career there and retire. And out of the clear blue, I got a call from the Weather Channel, and they were recruiting for a national winter weather expert to cover the, weather across the entire U.S. So I don't know how they got my name, but I got this call. I thought it was a joke at first, but I figured, they're going to fly me down there, and I actually have never seen the Weather Channel, so didn't think at all that it would involve actually any serious offer to take the job. But 5 weeks after I got down there, they called and said, "You're our top candidate." And I retired on December 31st, 2011. And on January 4th, I loaded my van and drove to Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Yay. We're so glad you did, Tom.
Wow. So they must have called you because it must have been snowing in Buffalo at the time, and they just said, "Hey, it's snowing there. Let's call that guy."
Right? That's it. We need somebody there. And you know what, though? I mean, think about it. Think about being in a place where everybody loves the weather and they're all geeky about it. And on top of that, you've got experts in all these different areas, and hurricanes and severe weather, tornadoes and on and on and on. And so it's like this one giant think tank. And when the weather starts really getting crazy, the place just explodes. And I'll tell you, every day I walk through the doors there, I pinch myself before I go into the studio because, as Dina knows, it's just so much fun to work there.
It really is.
It's fun to work with you. Well, because you're so nice about things. Like if he wants something, he'll can you please do this for me? And thank you so much. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're so nice.
That doesn't always happen, guys. So.
Yes, it does. It's true.
Yeah, it does.
Very
He always
true.
says please and thank you.
Yeah.
My mom taught me well, right?
Yeah,
There
she
you go.
did.
So tell me what's the difference? Because I don't know how you guys might know better, obviously, than me. But how many people transfer from a government entity like the National Weather Service and transfer into a commercial company like the Weather Channel? What was that? I mean, what was that transition like?
Oh, it was crazy. It had been years since I worked outside of the government. And the government is a great place, especially the National Weather Service. I absolutely love that position. But coming into a corporate environment, things were a lot different. Let me tell you one of the things that was really different. If you wanted to get anything done on the government side, it took most of your career to get to that point.
Oh my God.
Yeah, believe it.
Yeah, at the Weather Channel, something would be discussed one day, and the next day it would be implemented, or even quicker than that. And so I love the ability to change on the fly. If something wasn't working, you went to something else. I was also overwhelmed, absolutely overwhelmed, by the amount of information that gets ingested by the company and then gets turned around and put right back onto air. I remember when I worked in the National Weather Service, we used to have a big screen of the Weather Channel up in, at the front of the office. And there would be times when storm reports that would come into the National Weather Service office were literally on the Weather Channel within 15 seconds after we issued the report. Their ability to actually bring in information and then communicate that to their viewers is, I think it's unparalleled.
Yeah.
Neat stuff.
We try to go as fast as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
The other thing that was fascinating for me, it was a completely new education because I came from, many of you may be familiar, National Weather Service offices take care of a local area, maybe a portion of a state. And so you become very good at forecasting for that local area and you know all of the effects there. But I went from forecasting for this little niche in upstate New York. And on any given day, I can be talking about snows into the Cascades and the Sierra, while a Denver low is developing for upslope snow there, as a blizzard is finishing in North Dakota, and the lake effect snows developing off of Lake Erie. And at the same time, we've got cold air damming in the Carolinas that is setting up to develop a nor'easter that's going to hit New England. The education I had to go through to learn all of that winter weather was a challenge. But when you were at that point that I was at in my career, it was fantastic because it was like going back to school all over again.
Yeah, it's all new. I can see that.
And Tom, I've always wondered too, so when you come in, do you what's a typical day for you? Are you making forecasts for all of those, different types of events, or is it collaborative, or because it's hard to be an expert on when you're on air, it seems like you're an expert of every one of these events, but when you come in, there's no way you can do all that in like an 8-hour shift. How do you do that?
It's a very good question. Let me back up for a second and just tell you that at one point, up until last year, at one point, we had as many as 800 people working at the Weather Channel. Think about that. Wow. Last year, there was a split of the company. Part of the company was sold to IBM, the digital side. The TV side is still an entity in itself. But the Weather Channel has an entire group of forecasters, part of the WSI Corporation, that actually deal with the day-to-day forecasting like a forecaster would do in the National Weather Service office. So they provide a lot of the background, nitty-gritty daily work of actually going through the model information and developing a forecast. My job was to come in and coordinate all of that information, work with the news desk and those who develop the shows throughout the day to help determine what the high impact winter weather is going to be across the U.S. And then how do we prioritize communicating that to the public? So that was part of my job. Of course, the part that I love the most is being able to educate the viewers on air and share my enthusiasm for winter weather. And that is a riot, you know. So they wanted somebody that would be able to do that. And then as an expert, and I had some experience in the National Weather Service working as a science officer who trained the staff. I've got the luxury, the wonderful opportunity to train a lot of the on-camera meteorologists specifically for winter weather.
I lost.
And people like me,
I think, Tom,
too.
you're kind of the Spock. The science off. You're like Spock of the channel.
It was always science office suggested to Weather Service officials, my bosses, that all science officers, male and female, should get pointy ears.
So, Tom, what's the craziest storm you've ever had to forecast, either in Buffalo or while you've been at the Weather Channel? Just like the most difficult storm to forecast and why?
Well, there's been so many. You know,
It's not fair. It's not fair.
I'll tell you one area I can go to, and that was back last year with the storm, and you'll probably ask us about naming our winter storms as well. There was a storm in January of last year we referred to as Jonas. It was a storm that hit at the end of January and produced this absolutely amazing snowstorm that went from Washington, D.C. up through New York City, record snows there. That was one of the most interesting storms I worked with because that was a nor'easter that had all of its components come together to produce this massive, massive snow event. That was one of my favorites. You know, I come from Buffalo and we're known for lake effect snowstorms up there. My most difficult forecast and probably the most damaging snowstorm I had seen in my career was back in 2007, I think it was, October 12th and 13th, very early in the season. We had a storm that put down 24 inches of snow in Buffalo while there were still leaves on all of the trees.
Wow.
Nice.
That produced, in some estimates, where 90% of the trees in the Buffalo area had some damage to them from this storm.
Sure.
And what was amazing is we only forecast 3 inches of snow or so out of that.
Oh my gosh.
You know
But
what?
here's
Tom?
A bitch for raking the yard.
Man.
That was when he
so
rake the yard.
ironic. Yeah, it was so ironic about that because people were just in the process of beginning to rake leaves, and the next day they were removing full trees out of their yard.
Wow.
Here's the crazy part about it, though. This was one of these storms where you've been working there all these years, and it was early October. The temperature of the lake was 62 degrees.
Wow.
Wow.
How in the world are you going to get snow when just upwind of you, you've got this 200-mile stretch of a lake with 60-degree water?
Yeah.
But as you all know, as meteorologists, you know, snow doesn't develop down here. It develops up here in the atmosphere. And it was cold enough through that layer of the atmosphere to develop very heavy snow. And, you know, even though it's 62 degrees on the lake, that warm air doesn't go very high off the lake, maybe within the first couple hundred feet, and then it cools down very, very rapidly. So we all learned a lesson on that one, that it's maybe almost never too warm on those lakes to snow, as long as you've got cold enough air moving across them.
Yeah.
So what coming from Buffalo, that big 84 inches of snow or whatever it was a couple years ago?
In 2000, well, in Buffalo in Christmas week of 2001, we picked up 82 inches of snow in 1 week. The saving grace with that storm that occurred over an entire week. So we had 2 or 3 bouts of about 2 feet of snow through the week, one after another. But everybody was home from school. So all the kids were out of school for Christmas break, and many people were off work at that time. That was a savior. But what was interesting about that amount of snowfall, especially in an old eastern city like Buffalo, you have all of these neighborhoods with these big houses that are one right next to another with narrow little driveways. It was so difficult to remove all of that snow that rather than shoveling or trying to use a snowblower, they literally had to bring front end loaders down these streets over about a week and a half period to remove the snow because you had nowhere to put it. That was a beauty.
That's great.
Yeah.
So with all this snow, sorry, Brady, I'm going to ask this question.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
All right. With all these snowstorms, here's the question I want to know, because you had to have been a big part of this, I would imagine, or certainly have to support it at this point, is the challenges.
Talking about Chernobyl?
Naming, yeah, the Chernobyl Ridge.
There you go.
Buffalo. No. What are the challenges in naming winter storms? And you've probably answered this question 800 billion gazillion times. I just want to know what have been the challenges, because you're in the middle, whether you were a part of that or not. I'm sure you were, but you're in the middle of that. What have been the challenges in doing that? And is that something that you feel now, a few years later, do you see that catching on, or what have you witnessed, and what were the challenges?
Yeah, good questions. I'll give you a little background. When I first started at the Weather Channel 5 years ago, I was approached by the management with the question and the information that they had looked seriously at naming winter storms across the U.S. ahead of time, before the storm had already occurred. This was different from the way that storms would be named and ranked by other entities. Some of you may be familiar with work that was done by Louis Ussolini, director of the National Weather Service, and Paul Cosin, who was a winter weather expert a while ago at the Weather Channel, in developing something called the Northeast Storm Impact Scale, or NESIS. They would rank winter storms based on what had happened. This deal with the Weather Channel...
Meaning what? Can you explain that, meaning what had happened?
They would rank the storms based on the amount of snow that occurred over a certain population and a certain area in the northeastern United States.
Okay.
So those were storms that were ranked but not named. The Weather Channel wanted to actually name storms based on a forecast of what was going to happen. And it was a very challenging goal for them to aspire to. And it was kind of handed off to me and a couple of other people to develop a way to do this. There you go. So, which, I'm up for the challenge. So what we did is the first year we jumped into this, and we had a committee of individuals, 3 of us, that would actually assess each of these storms and try to get some feeling for the type of impact these storms would have on a national scale across the U.S. And I think we named something like 26 or 27 storms that first winter. We went back after that first winter and we looked at all of these storms to try to get a feeling as to whether they really did produce the type of impacts we thought they would produce. To make a long story short, we calibrated these storms kind of like that NESIS scale based on the population and the area that these storms would impact. And we came up with a quantitative way of naming these storms and have used it ever since. So what we do is we look at the time-proven method of gauging impacts from winter storms. Those are the winter storm warnings that are put out by National Weather Service offices. And as you guys know, a storm that impacts Burlington, Vermont is going to have with maybe 8 inches of snow. It's going to have a lot different impact up there than it will in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, definitely.
National Weather Service winter warning criteria is developed by local offices, and it's based on latitude. So as an example, in Buffalo, if you get 7 inches of snow in a 12-hour period, that will trigger a warning. In Atlanta, Georgia, all you have to get is 2 inches of snow for an entire event to trigger a warning. So using that as our basis to gauge the impacts that would happen across the country, we came up with a quantitative method of either 2 million people or an area about the size of the state of Montana as being the minimum to name a winter storm. Though either of those had to be under winter storm warnings to get to a point where the storm would get a name. And it was very rough for the first year and a half. In fact, when we first rolled this out, the meteorological community was just aghast at the cavalier attitude the Weather Channel had for going out and deciding they were going to name these storms. And I came from NOAA. I came from the National Weather Service. I was very, it was extremely difficult for me to walk that line. But, you know, I gave it a chance, and I found it interesting because the first year, somebody from the Weather Channel, Brian Norcross, gave a talk to the broadcast meteorology community, and he had everybody raise their hand if they didn't like the idea that the Weather Channel was naming storms. And everybody raised their hand. Nobody liked that idea. Then he said, how many of you would raise your hand if the National Weather Service took this over about not liking it? And nobody raised their hand. Their answer essentially was, it's not that we don't like naming winter storms. We don't like the Weather Channel doing that. We'd like to have that handled by the government the same way that they do with hurricanes. And I understood that completely coming from that side. But I also worked for the government. And as I mentioned to you early on, it takes a long time for them to change ways and to take on new programs. By the way, they just stopped using capital letters in all of their statements.
Yep.
So the deal was we were going to go ahead with it. And when people ask me, why does the Weather Channel do it? I try not to make this a cavalier thing when I say it, but we do it because we can. We're a national network that covers the entire United States. And so we've got the ability to assess that, to gauge the impacts that are going to occur, and then communicate that to our viewers. We don't want to do this alone. We'd love to hand this off and get all the rest of the weather industry, private, you know, local TV, whatever, on board with this and develop a method that everybody could use and share. One of the neatest things we do with naming winter storms is because they got a name, you can hashtag them, and then that becomes your one-stop shopping place for all the information for the storms.
Hey, Tom, remember the first winter storm that we named that really picked up steam? Remember Nemo?
Nemo.
That was the big one where I think the public got on board and people were tweeting pictures with like blow up Nemos in the yard. I remember pictures like that.
That was hilarious.
And it was funny because people, like, especially now that I've switched over to digital, I'm looking at Twitter and I'm looking for storm reports and people taking videos and pictures. And if you use a name, it really does make life easier. And you can, you know, like say this week, here's a good example. We have Lake Effect, we have Kaylee, you know, we have different things going on. So people, it's a great way to distinguish between two different storms. Plus, then Kaylee's going to move pretty much across the country. And that way everybody kind of knows, oh, this is the same thing that happened in the Sierra. This happened in the Rockies. Now it's coming through Ohio. And it if you do hashtag it, then you can have a great kind of history of the storm.
You know what's funny? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I love it for that. Go ahead, Jen.
I actually was one of the skeptics back in the day. I worked in a local TV station. I'm like, the Weather Channel's naming winter storms. And that was before I came to the Weather Channel. But now that it's, you know, we've been doing it for 5 years.
Now that they pay you?
They've been doing it for 5 years. It's one of those things that, instead of like, hey, remember that big storm like 2 or 3 years ago? You actually just can say a name like Winter Storm Jonas and people know exactly what you're talking about. So it's a great way to distinguish.
Ken was the one who TP'd your house.
Thank you.
It's great, though. It's awesome.
But I remember that too. Like, I wasn't sure about it either. And then Tom, you had this like kind of little class that you had a bunch of the Mets in, and you explained the science behind it. And I had not realized how much science you were actually putting in there. At first when you thought about like, hey, this thing looks big, let's give it a name. Yeah. There was a lot more involved, and you really kind of turned me around, and I was on board with it ever since.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Tom, who names the winter storms?
So the naming is done by a committee of 3 meteorologists at the Weather Channel. Myself, Stu Ostro, Director of Communications and Meteorological Content, and John Erdman, a meteorologist who works on the digital side with Dina. All three of us have years of experience with winter weather forecasting, and we literally, are on the phone with conference calls and emails, monitoring these systems as they're developing and as the models are suggesting they're going to evolve across the U.S. It doesn't come without a tremendous amount of consternation. Is consternation. That's the word I'm using.
It's a big word.
It's a big
word. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Let me get the dictionary.
Okay, so let me give you an example here. One of my good friends. Say that.
So it's not like Bob the janitor is helping out with names?
No, it is not. It gets pretty crazy on the phone calls sometimes. That would be a whole show in itself. But what's interesting is a good friend of mine is Louis Ussolini, Dr. Ussolini, who's the director of the National Weather Service. He and I just geek out over winter weather and have all of our careers. But Louis makes a good point. He's said to me several times, he said, well, Tom, not every winter storm is this bowling ball entity of a low pressure system that moves across the United States and you can identify. Indeed, many of these storms have many different components. How do you determine what is the storm and what is not? And that's one of the challenges that we have on this committee of 3, this team, and really assessing what you call a winter storm and what part of that weather that's moving across the U.S. Deserves to be part of that system or that name. That's one of the biggest challenges we have. We have a number of rules in our rule book that help us with that.
So, Tom, when it comes to experiencing weather versus like predicting weather, I know one challenge you probably have is when you see a big winter storm like that, you're probably dying to get out there. Do the producers let you? I know they let Jim and some of those other guys go out. Do you get any sort of say in whether you get to go out or not, or do they pretty much want you in the studio, don't they?
Yeah. How ironic is it that you all the way from Buffalo down to Atlanta to work winter weather? Are you kidding me? You must see me wiping drool off my face when I'm watching Cantori and Seidel. Seidel was just south of Buffalo tonight live. They like to keep their experts in studio, and I understand why. I mean, we're there to really tell the story and explain the science behind the storms. I've gotten to go out a couple of times, and I've gotten to really enjoy it. Let me tell you something. It's hard work. You think about, like, Seidel today was in Buffalo. He was on air on and off for a 14-hour period, out in a parking lot, dressed in 7 layers of clothing. Now, apart from being out there and having to work all day, there are certain things that one must do during a 14-hour period to keep the body from exploding. So, just the ability to to get back into a building, to get food, to do whatever. And to be out, think about being out in those kind of conditions, whether it be a heavy rainstorm, a hurricane, a blizzard, or whatever. I'll tell you what, these are Iron Men and Iron Women that are out there that cover these storms like that. So I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, when I say bring it on, the worse I feel, the better. When I'm out.
Lay down the law, Tom. Just say I'm going.
So, Tom, I'll tell you what, Tom, we don't get into a lot of current weather events on this show. We don't really kind of cover what's going on currently a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I do have a question, because currently there is in New York, a little bit of Pennsylvania, and even northern Ohio, a lot of lake effect snow going on currently. And I think it would be interesting to find out a little bit more about what causes that, I guess, what creates that, how often does that occur in those areas each season?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the snowiest populated areas to the east of the Rocky Mountains are in the Great Lakes and downwind of those giant bodies of water. For those that aren't familiar, the lakes are kind of like inland seas. They're gigantic. Just take Lake Erie. The smallest of the lakes is 225 miles long. So you've got this lake sitting there, and in the fall and early winter, the temperature of the lake may be, say, 50 degrees. That's about what it is now. And then you've got this Arctic air that comes down out of Canada, and it may be 10, 15 degrees. So you got this really cold air moving over this warm water. And this warm water's got these air parcels that come off of it that are nice and warm, and they get into that cold air and they say, damn, I'm buoyant. I'm just going to keep rising and keep rising and keep rising. So you get all of these updrafts that develop with all this moisture that rises off the lake. And of course, when it gets to a certain point in the atmosphere and cools down, that moisture condenses out into the form of some type of precipitation, and it's generally cold enough to form snow. So that's how it forms. It's pretty much that process. And then the wind direction takes that moisture and channels it somewhere downstream. And that's how you get these different types of bands of snow. So it's that temperature difference that brings heat and moisture, produces the snow, and then the winds tell you where that band is going to set up. And what's really neat, if you can keep the wind out of one direction for a long period of time, that 10 or 15 mile wide band may sit there and put down 5 feet of snow. And if you drive 20 miles on either side of it, you can get to green grass. It's wild. It's absolutely
those
wild.
Are the storms that, sorry, Brady, those are the storms where like people say, you guys messed it up completely. I'm like, did you go 5 miles north? There was like snow.
And that was always the challenge in Buffalo, because think about it this way. If you forecast the band over the north side of the city of Buffalo and you forecast a foot of snow, well, if the band is off, the wind direction's off by 10 degrees, that band is going to be about 10 to 15 miles south of where it was. So you not only are messed up for these people because you told them you were going to get a foot of snow and they get nothing, but all these people down there that you forecast no snow for, they're getting the foot of snow. So it's an extreme challenge. And I know in the upstate New York, people are used to understanding the way we would communicate in our warnings how these snow bands would develop and approximately where they would be. So a person might understand that on the north side of Buffalo, as an example, the heavy snow band would develop, and later that night it would drop southward into what we refer to as the South Towns. Everybody has an idea that, okay, not a big band of snow that's going to be going on. I need to listen very carefully in case they are off by a little bit, because we would put out a lot of updates on that. So it can be a huge challenge for sure. Yeah.
I think it's a huge challenge just because of precip type. Like you could be off like a few degrees, you're getting ice or you're getting snow. A few degrees can make a difference in how much snow. I mean, I think it's the hardest thing to forecast.
Yeah, winter weather, and I've talked to other experts at the Weather Channel, the hurricane expert, Michael Lowry, Dr. Greg Forbes, the severe weather expert. They have their own issues with forecasting their type of weather, but they say to me, boy, I don't know how you do it. It has got to be almost impossible to forecast what we call P-type or precipitation type. Most of these big storms, you're talking about Columbus, maybe next week, maybe they're going to be in rain. They're not going to get snow. That idea of different types of precipitation in winter weather can make or break a forecast. And of course, the precipitation forms up above you. So this column of air that's sitting above you, the models have some idea as to what the temperature profile is going to be. But if it's off by just 1 or 2 degrees, it can mean the whole world of difference between rain versus snow. And that as well is a huge forecast challenge.
That's a little teaser to our discussion topic. I don't want to give everything away right now, right? But
okay.
Maz, did you have a question for Tom?
Yes.
Or maybe not, Mr. Roboto?
I've got one quick one.
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
So basically, Tom, because the difficulty of forecasting, precipitation types and lake effect snow, is that what motivated you to create BuffKit or the Buffalo Toolkit?
Oh, okay. So for those of you who may not be aware, BuffKit is a toolkit that is used by operational forecasters around the country, both the U.S. and Canada. In fact, they use it around the world. And it was a homegrown software toolkit that was developed at the Buffalo National Weather Service office. It is a tremendous tool for helping forecasters dissect the weather, both in a time fashion and in a fashion of what the temporal changes are in the atmosphere at very high resolution. I'll call myself, especially because of my age, I'll call myself the grandfather of that, because I started the precursor to what is out there now, BuffKit. I did some of the original work, and then this amazing brain of an individual, great friend of mine. His name is Ed Maroney. He is now the director of the Warning and Decision Training Branch for the National Weather Service out in Oklahoma. Ed came into our office as the first science officer and was a computer genius. And his skills allowed us to develop BuffKit over a series of several months to roll it out then for forecast offices. And many of you know about that tool.
It's an amazing tool. We learned about it in school. I read your papers in school. It's great. It's awesome.
It's fantastic. And Ed was he's the guy I give all the credit to.
It's awesome.
All right. So let's, I want to get into a little bit of your hobby, Tom, because one of the things that I've really been amazed about, only because you introduced it to us, is your photography and photographing snowflakes. And I think that is amazing. I looked at your website. So do me a favor. First off, tell our listeners about your website, but explain, how do you do that?
Well, thank you. The website goes under the eclectic little name buffaloflakes.com. And it's
not to be confused with Frosted Flakes, right?
That is correct, which, by the way, is the favorite breakfast of any winter weather expert.
Absolutely.
But I've always enjoyed photography, and I'm not a professional by any means, but I had read a lot of the work of a guy by the name of Snowflake Bentley, a photographer who was a farmer that lived in Vermont back in the 1800s and took up this one of the first cameras and actually photographed snowflakes with this camera. I found it fascinating. So, as growing up, I would look at these snowflakes when they would land on the black fur of my Labrador Retriever dog.
Oh my.
Because it provided good contrast and good insulation. And I saw these amazing structures that I thought were only these drawings in books. And it took a few years to finally get some technology together so I could photograph them at a scale where I could see them. So I got a good friend of mine lent me an old microscope, and I took a point and shoot camera. I read about how the professionals do this online, but I didn't have the money to spend that kind of money on doing this. So I went out and bought $1.60 worth of plumbing parts and attached this point-and-shoot camera to a microscope. And then what I would do is I would go out at night and take glass slides and sit down on a piece of black felt in a box, and I'd wait for the snowflakes to come down and collect these, bring them in, put them under the microscope, make sure I didn't breathe because they would disappear immediately. And then I would literally photograph them with my point-and-shoot camera. And I was amazed at the results I was getting. What I've got on my site is fun stuff. And for the resources I put into this, I thought I did pretty well. If you go online these days and go to like websites like snowcrystals.com, snowcrystals.com is a website that's maintained by Dr. Ken Liebrecht from Caltech. He's a nuclear crystal physicist.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but he's got this multi-$1,000 system to take these unbelievable photographs of snowflakes. And if you go online, there are a lot of other individuals that are doing it these days. You would be amazed. If you want to do it yourself, one of the first ways to do this is just get outside on a night when not these big flakes are coming down, because those are actually a combination of hundreds of snow crystals. You get outside on a night when it's cold, when the air is almost still, so the flakes will come down, and you get a nice light snow coming down with these tiny flakes. Set a piece of black felt down and get out a magnifying glass or anything like that. And again, don't breathe on them, but begin to look at what is falling onto that black felt, and you will be amazed.
It's so cool.
That is awesome, and that's definitely a great website. So, how can listeners follow you on social media or contact you, Tom?
So, Jen, you might have to help me with this. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook through the Weather Channel. It's TWC at Tom Niziol, or Jen will check that for me.
I'm looking it up right now.
Looking it up.
But he's great on Facebook.
Social media, it's hard.
TWC Tom Niziol.
Okay, yeah.
At TWC Tom Niziol, and I have a lot of fun on my Facebook page. I put geek out stuff on there all the time. So if you're really bored, you can come to that and check it out. No, there's a lot of fun things on there. So, and I'm on Twitter as well. Yes. If you want to follow me there, I guess it's at Tom Niziol for Twitter.
Yeah, well, that's simple.
Yeah, those are easy ones. The name is a little difficult to spell, so it's Niziol. That's my last name.
Very good. All right. Well, hey, it's time for our lightning round, which is a speed round of questions for our guest. And in honor of Tom's published most embarrassing moment, which apparently had something to do with Al Roker and either introducing you or commenting about your likeness to Dr. Bunsen Honeydew.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to play tonight. We're playing Muppet or Not a Muppet. That's what we're playing.
Okay.
That's what we're playing tonight. So I've got basically what I'm going to do, Tom, is I'm going to rattle off a number of names. And what you have to do is just say Muppet or Not a Muppet. Okay?
Okay.
We're gonna rip through these. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready to go.
We're ready. All right, here we go. Number 1, Beaker.
Muppet.
Woo!
All right. Number 2, Sweetums.
Muppet.
That is a Muppet. All right.
Bingo.
I didn't think so. You got it, Tom.
Yeah.
Next one is Dead Tom.
Hopefully not a Muppet.
Oh my.
Unfortunately, that is a Muppet. You
Dead
need to watch
Tom?
your
I
Treasure
never heard of
Island.
that.
Muppets Treasure
I've
Island.
never heard of that either.
Number 4, Dopey.
Nah, he was one of Snow White's dwarfs.
Yeah, wasn't he a 7 dwarfs?
You're correct. Not a Muppet. All right, next one, Wicket.
Wicket. I got to say no. I don't remember that either.
You're correct. Not a Muppet. I didn't ding you on the last one, did I? But yeah, Wicket's not a Muppet. He was an Ewok.
Rolf? Yeah. He was a Muppet.
He was a Muppet.
There you
Yep,
go.
a dog. All right, next one.
Wow.
Amazing Mumford.
The Amazing Mumford. No.
He was a Muppet. He was an
Oh,
Egyptian.
first.
All right, next one. Gandalf the Grey.
No, I don't think so. No, not a Muppet.
All right, correct. He was a wizard in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Biff.
Biff. Nah, I think he was.
He was a Muppet. Correct.
Wow.
He was,
Oh, goodness.
Sesame Street, like garbage collector or something.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. Captain Breakfast.
No, I don't think so. No, not a Muppet.
All right, Captain Breakfast was a Muppet.
Oh.
I had never heard of him, so that
Wow.
was kind of a trick question, but he truly was a Muppet. All right, next one. Mario.
Well, Mario was. I know he had brothers. Now, again, I'm going to go no on that. No
You're
on
correct.
Mario.
Mario was not a Muppet. He was a video game.
Yeah, I was like,
Thank you.
Next one. Yoda.
oh my god.
Yoda. No, not a Muppet.
Correct. He was not a Muppet, but that's questionable because he was puppeteered by Frank Oz, who was a Muppet puppeteer. But no, he was not a
there's
Muppet.
some
All right,
trivia for you.
a
Yeah.
little bit. Guy Smiley.
Guy Smiley. Gosh, I got to go no on that as well.
He was a Muppet.
It's gone.
Oh my, not
He
good.
was a Sesame Street game show host.
Game show, yes.
All right, next one.
Okay.
Crash Bandicoot.
Bandicoot.
Really digging
Yeah,
deep on these. I gotta go no on that one too, only because I don't.
You're correct. He was a video game.
Okay.
All right, next one. Bert and Ernie.
Of course, Bert and Ernie.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Waldorf and Statler.
Oh yeah, the two old timers. I would know them from
All
anywhere.
right. Abbott and Costello.
Yeah. Who's on first? I don't believe so. I'm old enough to remember them.
All right. Lou Zealand. Lou Zealand.
New Zealand. He comes from down under. I'm thinking. I'm gonna go no.
You're incorrect. He was Lou Zealand was the boomerang fish thrower.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Fish thrower. I throw it.
Oh, there you go.
Back. Yeah.
Where
right.
does the fish come in? What? Oh,
Yeah, I
he
don't
was
know.
a fish?
Evil
Oh,
Knievel. Evil Knievel, Tom. Muppet or not a Muppet?
I'm not a Muppet.
Very good. All right. The Electric Mayhem.
Boy, was that the? I want to say that might have been the group. I think that was a group of guys that played. Yes.
Yes.
You're correct.
Nice.
They were Muppets.
Oh,
All right.
nice.
The Meat Puppets.
Puppet.
A meat puppet. This sounds like a badly rated movie.
Yes.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go no on this one.
You're correct. Now they are a band, and they're actually one of my favorite bands.
Phil has all their
The
albums.
meat puppet?
Yeah, the Meat Puppets.
Oh, their
Yeah.
music cannot be good. That music
It was kind of a
Are they vegetarians?
post-punk, kind of little country mixed in. It's really an interesting group. Actually, Brady, I saw them up in Columbus. I think last year they played up in Columbus. So
I was
all right,
probably there.
Last four. We're down to our last four.
Wow.
Frodo, Muppet or not a Muppet?
I'm not touching that one either. I'm gonna go no. I'm going no.
You're correct. He was a Hobbit, not a Muppet. Frank the Tank. Frank the Tank.
I'm going no on that too.
You're correct. That was Will Ferrell in Old School.
Oh, jeez.
Gosh.
The last two, Flying Zucchini Brothers. The Flying Zucchini Brothers.
I don't think they were Muppets. No.
They were Muppets. The Flying Zucchini Brothers were an acrobatic act.
Should have
Muppets.
known better.
And last, Pepe the Prawn.
Pepe boy, he just sounds like he'd be a Muppet. I'm going to go with it. Yeah.
And you did.
All right.
Good job.
Nice.
Good job,
Pepe the
Tom.
Prawn was a Muppet. You are correct. So well done. That was actually pretty good, Tom. I was pretty impressed with that. So
I love the Muppets.
Well, I appreciate. Thanks for playing along with us. That's always fun to do a little segment like that. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick break for Brady's Storm School, and when we get back, we're going to come back to everyone and try and figure out why forecasters just are having a struggle trying to come up with a snowfall consensus.
Yeah.
All right, break. Good job.
You know what, Phil? For my next storm school, just take Tom's thing about the lake effect snow. Just clip that.
I know. I thought that was good, but then it's Tom's storm school and not Brady's.
You can just do a fill in for just one.
Why don't we combine it and make it Tom Brady's storm
Oh,
school?
I could do that.
Check
Yeah.
that out.
Nice.
With the deflated balls and everything. That would be great.
That sounds
All right, we
painful.
just lost all of our New England listeners, I think.
God.
That
They don't
listen to
watch
us.
the Raw.
Yeah, no.
All right, hey, one quick thing, Tom, if you could do me a favor, since
Yes.
we're recording right now, will you record a little Stormfront Freaks spot for us?
Sure.
If you can just say, hey, I'm Tom Niziol of the Weather Channel. You're listening to the Stormfront Freaks podcast. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Tom Niziol, winter weather expert at the Weather Channel, and you're listening to Stormfront Freaks podcast.
Beautiful. All right.
Wow.
Awesome.
We'll take
It's almost like you do that. You know, it's almost
Like he does it for a living.
Yeah, like you do it for a living.
That's right.
It's almost. Yeah.
Maz,
right.
are you still with us?
Yeah, can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we
Now
can.
we can. Now you're coming good better.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay.
I'm surprised I only crashed once so far.
Yeah, that's why we're going to try out the other thing. For
All
a
right,
number
I
of
I think I've crashed.
reasons, actual, but-
So
All
what is
right,
it?
so-
YouTube? You said, Mass?
MJ, yeah, we said.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're going to try YouTube.
Oh, what is it? YouTube, like?
It's YouTube Live, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
actually, they have integrated Google Hangouts into it. You used to do YouTube Live, you used to need to actually have some production software and stuff like that to do it. But now you can use Google Hangouts to do a live, and it records at the same time. So,
Oh, nice.
And that's new. That didn't exist when we first started doing this, but it does now. So
Cool.
All right. So we'll quick just get going here.
we got to
As soon
roll.
as we have everybody. So what we'll do now is this next segment, we'll just go into our discussion topic, which is going to be about snowfall forecasting and how specific the media should be or can be. I think obviously from a basic listener standpoint, that's always the frustration is, hey, you said we were going to get 6 inches and we got 2, or you said we were getting 2, now we're getting 6. That kind of frustration. So I'll start off by I'm going to comment about an article about a particular snowstorm and the different responses going into the snowstorm, the different forecasts that different entities were providing, including Weather Service, Weather Channel, AccuWeather, etc. And we'll just kind of use that to start off the discussion of why it's so challenging and what we should be doing to, I guess, correct that, or what's already being done to correct that. Tom and Dina and Jen and some of you guys can comment a little bit more on that as well, since you're in that area. So, sound good?
Yep, sounds good. I'm going to keep you to time on this segment, just so you know. It's
Okay.
okay. It's okay. We're okay.
Right.
It's
That's
good.
fine.
But for this one, we'll keep her to time.
Okay, that's fine. Everybody ready to roll?
Yes.
Ready?
Do it.
Mark counts in.
Let's hit it in 3, 2, go.
All right, so welcome back. So we've got Tom with us here tonight, and so we thought it'd be fun to kind of discuss winter storm snowfall forecasting and really talk a little bit about how specific should the media get, or how specific can they be. And so what I first wanted to do is bring up an article in NJ.com. It's by Len Melisurgo, and it's called Here's What 5 Forecasters Are Saying About the Expected Weekend Storm. Now, I'm not going to give you the date yet of this storm, but I'm going to talk a little bit, as the article does, talk about this upcoming weekend storm that was up in the Northeast. So he basically went on to the whole premise of the article was the fact that here's 5 major weather forecasting entities, and all of them are kind of coming up with some different solutions. And then I'm going to tell you what the actual result was and the storm and everything else. So this upcoming nor'easter, basically, so it was up in the Northeast. National Weather Service, so basically what he talked a little bit in the article about is the National Weather Service, at least at the time, and they may now too as well, but didn't really go out on a limb too much in talking about snowfall amounts. They talked just mostly about the fact, he says here, National Weather Service says, there's a potential for substantial precipitation, both snow and rain. Gusty winds could cause additional issues with blowing and drifting. Potential exists for 50-mile-per-hour gusts along the coast. Blah, 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 blah. So they didn't get a whole lot into it as far as snowfall amounts. AccuWeather, which is up in State College, Pennsylvania, where, of course, Brady did his internship, as everybody probably knows, unless you're listening for the first time. They basically they were predicting about 18 to 24 inches in northwestern New Jersey and the Lehigh Valley region, and, of course, some of the other regions less than that, but they were forecasting up to 18 to 24 inches. The Weather Channel, and you know what, I take that back. AccuWeather, I was reading ahead. AccuWeather, he said, was stating roughly about 6 to 12 inches of snow. And in the hardest hit areas, if the rain developed to snow, maybe 1 to 2 feet. Okay, it was the Weather Channel predicting 8 to 24 inches. WeatherWorks, a private weather consulting firm, was on the line predicting that the weekend storm could be a blizzard. They weren't predicting any snowfall amounts. They said it could be the blizzard of this particular year. I won't give the year yet. And the 5th one they had was the Eastern PA Weather Authority, who on Monday before the event was forecasting roughly 18 to 24 inches of snow. Okay, so different levels. Some were forecasting snowfall amounts, some weren't. Anybody want to guess what the storm was? Which storm?
Jonas?
It was, yeah. So this was Winter Storm Jonas, otherwise also known as Snowzilla, January 22nd to the 24th of this year of 2016, where there was up to 3 feet of snow in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast area. So the question obviously comes, the challenges, and there's a perfect example of forecasting snowfall amounts, and really also trying to ask the question, does location factor into early prediction?
In the question about location, meaning if your forecast entity is located
no, location-wise, as far as where are you located where this storm is hitting, does that create some of the challenge? And we talked a little bit about that when we were talking with you earlier, Tom, but maybe you can give us your 2 cents.
It's such a challenge all the way around. There are so many factors that come into play when you are trying to predict what that atmosphere above you is going to be like, its temperature structure, and how these massive storms actually evolve. Trying to forecast, in my mind, snowfall amounts more than 3 days into the future to begin with, I think can oftentimes be a futile task. But people need to have that information to plan. And in this day and age, when you're running a school system or you've got to bring in salt and extra crews for clearing operations, you want to have some ideas to maybe what are the odds that we're going to have the big storm. And to me, that's a real important factor that we're starting to look into now in how to communicate the potential for a snowstorm for an area. And that is something we refer to as probability forecasting. So if I told you well, we're looking at this. I can't give you an actual amount, but there's an 80% chance that we're going to get over a foot of snow. And oh, by the way, there's a 20% chance we're going to get only 2 or 3 inches. It gives people maybe a better idea that, well, 8 out of 10 times I'm going to get hit big. But there are 2 out of 10 times, and we're not going to see anything out of this. This idea of doing probability forecasting and being able to communicate and educate the public to that is something that a lot of forecasters and scientists are talking about these days. So I hope I didn't jump the gun here on explaining that, but forecasting snowfall can be an extremely inaccurate science.
So is that where they start to use terminology as forecasters? Instead of coming down to numbers, they would say this could be a nuisance snow or a shovelable snow or a plowable snow, or a little bit more, but still not too quantitative?
That's another nice way to describe that, because it's a way that a lot of people who deal with this on a daily basis can assess the impacts. Shovelable snow, oh boy. That means it's going to be tough to get the car out of the driveway. I'm going to have to take more time to get the driveway shoveled. It's definitely going to take time to get to work. The parking lot may not be cleared. It kind of puts all that into someone's mind. So that's terminology, at least, that can give some people an idea as to what the impact is going to be. We love to throw around numbers a lot. So, but not everybody kind of equates all of these numbers in their minds. So that's another good way to communicate or assess impacts.
Yeah, Tom, and I think that's probably the biggest challenge, because you can be the best forecaster, but if you can't communicate your forecast in a way that makes sense, because the people, most people in public, or at least, a decent amount of them still think, they hear chance and they're like, oh, meteorologist, you don't know what you say it's going to be 50%. So one thing's going to happen. You don't really know what's going to happen. So I think it's very important that we communicate it in a very effective way. And I think people on social media, I actually did a story for our local newspaper, or our local TV station, The Lantern. All these people on Twitter that have access to these models now, they'll post these,
Yes.
I remember last year, there was someone on Twitter that posted a 15-day GFS model, and it showed Columbus getting like 32 inches of snow in like 48 hours. And right next to it, they had a picture of a train bowling through like 5 feet of snow, saying we're all going to die. And they were like sort of serious, and they had a couple thousand followers on Twitter. And so I think that's a big part of that problem is because you can't just not allow these people to communicate that to the public, but you have to somehow, make the accredited institutions, be able to have more input than some of these other, other people on Twitter that just don't know what they're doing.
And here comes the train. I hear it in the background.
That's in my neighborhood. I put that in as a sound effect.
Perfect.
You hit on a great point there, and I have to touch on this one too, because you mentioned this forecast that comes out from this Twitter person. We don't know who that person is. They've got like 2,000 followers. Mm-hmm. Well, if you dig into it a little more, he's 11 years old.
Yep. You're right.
And he's working out of his parents' basement. And this young forecaster extraordinaire who wants to go to school and learn about weather and meteorology is grabbing these model maps from 15 days out and putting them out there like it's some PhD who's doing this. So you're right, especially in today's social media world. There's all kinds. You can get any forecast you want. At 300 hours on the GFS, there's always a blizzard. So that's very important as well. In naming winter storms across the United States and learning about all the challenges that you have in a place like Denver or in Boston or in DC, or you go on with this. We have to be very, very careful, especially meteorologists, in wish casting or well, man, we've had 3 model runs now that show that there's going to be a storm 5 days out. Let's tell people how much they're going to get. We have to be really careful about that because, as you all know, the farther out in time you get, the more uncertainty you're going to get typically in forecasts. Now, there are some weather patterns that will develop a weather system that that the models can latch onto and they have very good success with. And in some cases, we can forecast with pretty good accuracy 3-4 days out how much snow is going to fall in an area. But in most of the cases, that's very difficult to do. In the same storm, we could forecast with very good accuracy what part of that storm may get a lot of snow, but in another part of the storm where the precipitation type may be changing, there's complete uncertainty. So I take us back to this probability forecasting that we look at, the probability that something is going to occur. And running a whole bunch of computer models we refer to as ensemble model forecasting, where we have a whole bunch of members of a team that start out with just little different initial conditions. They use little different microphysics and that in the models. And we run these time and time again, and we develop a consensus among these models. We then can come up with a kind of a probability of the different odds we have to an area getting a certain type of precipitation or a certain amount of snow. And that's what a lot of researchers are looking at these days. And that I know in the National Weather Service, they're looking at this very seriously.
Jen, what can you, from a social media standpoint, in all of this? Because we haven't gotten into that, right? We're just talking about the challenges that multiple weather entities are having, and then you throw in that social media aspect.
Well, and that's the problem. Nowadays, it seems like everyone has access to, computer models, all the different computer models. And back in the day, I don't think that was the case. And we've got a lot of big weather geeks, and having social, a place where you can just post and do whatever you want. A lot of people, and they're uneducated, but they're excited. They think they may know what they're looking at, and they'll post something like that, like 14, 15 days out, and they don't even understand what they're looking at, and they post it, and they scare everyone. And some of them actually have a decent amount of followers. And it's one thing for everybody to know that they need to trust their source of weather information. They got to be able to, look in depth at that person that's providing that information and actually see who that is. Is that 11-year-old boy that's actually in his parents' basement? Or is it, accredited meteorologist that actually has a degree? And most meteorologists on social will say they're an actual meteorologist, what school they went to, that sort of a thing. They'll have their credentials on there. So it's something to double check. If you see something wild like that, make sure that you just check the source. The problem is if someone posts something like that, it freaks people out and it goes like viral. I know some Facebook posts have gone viral like that, and it's our job, and it makes it very difficult for us to have to be like, okay, that's not true, calm people down, that's not going to happen. So unfortunately, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Social media is great. It's a great way to reach people and give the forecast, but you've got other people on there who aren't meteorologists giving the forecast too. So the best thing to do is make sure you know the person you're getting the information from, and it's a trusted source, whether it's a network, a local TV station, an individual meteorologist. Just make sure you know they're an accredited person.
Well, yeah, and Jen, here's
go
ahead, Phil.
Well, I was going to ask Maz, and I think Maz is going to jump in there too, but I'm curious, Maz, just from a local forecasting standpoint, with the experience you've got, in a local setting, what are the pros and cons with being able to, and the rest of you can kick in too, from a national standpoint, trying to forecast for local snowfall amounts?
Well, the one plus is obviously being able to pronounce the names of towns better than on a national level, just saying. But
True.
but I would say like Tom, I would never ever in my wildest dreams ever go up against him forecasting for Buffalo, because he is probably the greatest expert in the world, because he's lived there, he's forecast there, he's worked there, he's done the science there. So there's something to be said about someone who's been in a localized area for a long time. All right. But that being said, I can't turn the other channel off. I love it. I love it. I love watching you guys. You're awesome.
Yes.
Thanks.
And that'll be $10.
At the Weather Channel, it can be hard to forecast, I think, locally, because a lot of local meteorologists have been there, 10, 15, 20 years or more, and they know the area and the weather systems and how it impacts them, their microclimates and all that. But at the Weather Channel, we have so many people there that are from so many different areas and know those little things in those different regions, little small towns, and that does help us out a lot, whether it's an on-camera meteorologist or a meteorologist behind the scenes. But still, sometimes we don't know some of the really, intricate, really, really small microclimates.
Right. I agree.
But I do think there's something to be said too about the Weather Channel because, people aren't, say the National Weather Service were to put on, start their own local TV station. I can guarantee you a lot more people would still want to watch the Weather Channel. So even though some of these forecasters have some of these nuances of these local networks, people might never, ever, hear about them because these weather, meteorologists might not have the chance to communicate them. So that's, one thing that the Weather Channel has is they can attract a bigger audience, because I know none of my friends are ever going to watch, a local weather cast from a local meteorologist or a National Weather Service meteorologist. That's something that the Weather Channel has going for them is they can actually attract a bigger audience to that platform.
Well, and I'll say this last, and I'll throw this out to everybody. It's kind of the last question, but two things with this question. Number one is with the current prediction abilities that we have, what's the best solution? Is it going to this probability snowfall amount scenario? Is that the best solution? Number two is what's the science that we're missing without getting too sciencey? What are we missing that's going to allow us to maybe better predict snowfall amounts?
I would say the one thing about the probability is if it's more than, say, 48 hours, maybe stick with more probabilities, and then within 48 hours, then you start to try to give totals.
Good. I like that.
That's kind of what we've been trying to do lately, at least even with on the lift. I tell you, there's days I remember being in a room with like 20 Mets looking at a storm, and every model was different. The Euro was different. The GFS was different. The RPM was a little different. Like all these, and I was like, thank God it is not up to me to make this decision because I just need to throw my hands up and go, I don't know. And I remember because it was one of those big snowstorms, there was a lot of ice involved. And once you get ice, you're shutting down cities. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it's really tough.
So what are we missing? Is there something from a scientific standpoint that if we had more of this or whatever it is, it's going to allow us to better forecast snowfall amounts? I mean, do we know what that is?
We have models, maybe higher resolution. I mean, they're getting better all the time. They're getting more high res all the time. I mean,
it's just the track sometimes, though. I mean, if the track of a storm, I mean, even by like 20, 30 miles or less can really impact, especially like the back side of a storm and, the transition zone. I mean, it can be so difficult sometimes. I mean, I think Tom talked about this before, like, one area is going to get pounded. They're definitely going to get, a set amount of snow, but it's the one that they could get sleet, freezing rain.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly where the storm's going to track. It's difficult. I think it's just, like Dina said, high resolution models, our tools, we need more improvement on that. But I like what Dina said about the probabilities. I think it's smart, up until about 2 days ahead of time, do the probability forecasting and then start, putting out totals.
Well, yeah. And I think Tom, go ahead, Mass.
I was just going to say, and I think like everything, it's just, and I don't mean just experience of a person. I mean, I've watched the Weather Channel from like day one when it just like when MTV came out initially. I watch the Weather Channel has gotten so good at what it does that people they'll still watch their local guys, but they're always going to turn, I believe, to the Weather Channel to see what's really going on because they've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, and truthfully, Matt, Maz, I'll be honest to our listeners, he's speaking from the heart. I know we've got 3 Weather Channel people on tonight, but he's speaking from the heart when he says that, and I believe him as well. Brady, what were you going to add?
Well, and I think, Phil, just like Tom was talking about earlier, probability is the future of forecasting and ensembles, and that's where all the research being done. And, if you really look at what is going to give you the most accurate information, it's going to be looking at the ensembles, because like Tom said, it's taking one model and it's running it 52 different ways with 52 different initial conditions, and that is how you can forecast more, most accurately. You don't just take one model and say, hey, that looks good for me, I want snow and I think this is going to happen. So that's really why I think the future of forecasting is definitely going towards probabilities, and it already is, but that's really how you're going to make the most forecast, the most accurate forecast. And also, I think for improving these forecasts and models, you just need more data. We need to continue investing, because that's, if we had a sensor in every meter in the atmosphere, we would be able to predict weather a lot easier because we'd have much, much more data. But of course, that's not, feasible. So we have to find other ways to get data in convenient ways that we can collect it and process it. But that's how we're going to move forward in processing stuff.
Yeah, because didn't NASA just launch another satellite? So that's a start.
And that's going to improve. That's going to improve it a lot,
Mm-hmm. And also understand the fact that if you haven't talked about this already, don't poo-poo the idea of just how far we've come with computer modeling and how much more accurate our forecasts are overall, even in the last decade here. I go back through a long career, and to see just how much better the models are able to simulate the atmosphere and how much more accurately we can predict going out in time, it really amazes me. Yes, we've got a long way to go, but we've come a long way as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's easy for people to forget that, we've got satellites and this stuff's got to go to space and back. And, we gotta realize what we've accomplished and what we've done. But we want, listeners, we want you guys to tell us what you think. Give us your feedback on, what the media should be doing when it comes to snowfall forecast amounts and, what you think is needed. You can comment by email at questions@stormfrontfreaks.com, or you can comment on our Facebook page at Stormfront Freaks, or Twitter, which is at Stormfront Freak without the S. But we'll always, as we do, share some of the responses we get on our next show. So we're going to go ahead and take another break, and we're going to cover details on how you can win our $99 Red Cross emergency preparation kit. That those of you watching us on Stormfront Freaks Raw, this is it, packed full of all kinds of stuff, including a hand crank weather radio, Eaton weather radio.
Nice. And a whistle, Phil. A whistle as well.
And a whistle. Oh, that's right. Watch episode 14 if you want to see the whistle. We'll fill you in on that. We'll get that out to you just in time for Christmas. And when we come back, we'll share our weather fools and our WX resources. Okay. Good. Hey, Tom, thank you so much.
That
man.
was
Unbelievable.
fabulous.
I know we lost you a little bit right at the end, but
sorry about that. Yeah. But,
awesome.
I really enjoyed it. Anytime you want to have me back, just holler.
Thanks, Tom.
You're awesome.
Tom,
I love your energy. I love your excitement in talking about this stuff. It shows. And I love that. Love it.
Great. Well, you guys have a fantastic program. I'm going to be watching from here on out. So, if you're ever down in Atlanta, come on through. We'll give you a tour of the Weather Channel.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
I might take you up on that, Tom.
Yeah.
Stone's cool.
Sounds
All right.
Tom, I'll follow up with you in the next day or two with an email and follow up. Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Appreciate
Bye,
you.
Tom.
Thank you.
See you, Tom.
Bye.
Bye
All right, bye.
Bye bye.
Okay. That was good.
Hey, Phil.
I knew Tom from what's that?
I was going to say, hey, you may want to take me out of the next segment, introing anything. Just audio.
Okay. Yeah. You come in and out a little bit, but do you have a different setup? Are you doing something different tonight?
Yeah, I couldn't.
Damn. What are you doing without testing it, brother?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well,
You can't
that, plus I ran upstairs trying to figure out who's all on the internet. I'm like, get off the internet, everybody!
Log off. Bandwidth hog, and we lost Phil. So
Oh no.
You're grounded.
that's two for him. And we lost somebody else.
Oh, wow.
Everybody's
So give me
dropping.
some good time to look for my weather fool real quick.
Yeah, I don't have either. Again, I'm lame, but
I only have a weather fool. That's it. I don't have a weather app or anything this time. My phone is getting so full, I can't fit any more apps
yeah, I
on
know.
there.
I hear you.
Because you're running out of space. Stop it.
Okay, so all right, so I don't know what I missed here. I lost it, but anyway, so
Yeah,
Brady,
well, we lost everybody. So
I see that. So Brady, Weather Fools, I have one.
I have one, but no weather app.
Okay, no weather resource.
I got nothing. I said that. So
I think I've got one. Weather.
What?
Yeah.
You know, when you think of them, like at the last minute, they're always like awesome. They're like the best.
No, they're
Like the last-
fantastic. They're fantastic.
I think you're still on a moratorium. I think we still have. I think that.
What's a moratorium? I don't know what that means.
Like, I think that means that yeah, you're temporarily.
Hey, here's a guy who's going 110 miles an hour in fog. That's pretty stupid.
that
Did
is
you
kind of
like one beat?
Oh my gosh, I was not.
We're missing your
soaring.
one-liners, Maz. This one
Yeah,
sucks.
Yeah, seriously.
We're totally missing your
I'm
one-liners.
sorry.
Fuck your setup tonight. I don't know what the hell you're doing. I'm serious. What? I don't know what you were thinking. I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna change my setup and surprise everybody, and we'll see how it works. That was a great idea. I got to try that. I'm giving you shit. You know that. All right. Okay. So weather fools. So Brady, do you know who's got one? Name off who's got one.
You have one.
I have a weather
Dean has one.
yeah.
Oh wait.
I have a resource. I don't have a fool.
Weather fool. I'm sorry.
I have a weather fool, not a weather resource.
Weather fool.
So it's just me and you then, Phil, with weather fools.
And
I have a weather fool.
Dina.
Oh,
Yeah.
You
Dina.
and Dina.
Oh, sorry.
The three
Write
of us
that
have a
down.
weather
Brady.
fool.
Write that
Get
down.
me out.
All right.
I'm good.
Put it
I've
in
got a
the
photographic
chat.
memory.
And then I'll do in place of Maz, I'll do the weather resource. I've got one. Who else has a weather resource?
I do.
Jen. Okay, me and Jen.
Okay. And just let me double check. When you share the screen to show your thing, you hit the share screen again, or what does it say? I forget.
I don't know.
Take it out.
I'm not going to share my screen.
I think you hit share screen a second time to take it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think last time it didn't look like it was unsharing it. So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna quick pull this up. So
I got neither thing, so I'm popping out for just a minute because I got to look at the YouTube thing because it was supposed to start at 10. So I'll be back. You can get started yourselves. You're good at that.
Okay.
Cool. Phil, I'm putting in the chat my weather resource.
Ooh, I've got a weather resource.
Can you? Can I ask you, because you put it in the chat? I can't always. I got to figure out how to copy and paste it, I guess. But can you just send me an email with that link as well?
I'll send it to you right now.
So I've got it on an email.
Stand by.
But if you have never shared your screen before, a lot of times there is a something you have to add to your browser. whatever you
got
call
it.
those. So maybe quick practice share screen, because otherwise you try and do it the first time, and a lot of times it won't happen because it'll tell you to download something.
Okay, good call.
So you might want to do that.
Let's see.
Yeah, I had to do that too last time, Jen.
1 sec.
So why don't you figure that out?
Oh yeah,
So
it does say get
Jen
extension.
and I, Weather Resource, Dina, Phil, and Brady with Weather Fool. Okay.
I've got a resource as well if we need one.
Well, we're fine. You don't need to make them up.
Well, it wasn't made up. It's
Well, that comment, "I've got a weather resource if you need one,"
well, like
kind of sounds like it's a little bit made up, or not
right.
made up, but just last minute, kind of shooting from the hip.
Well, no, this is actually a site I use for.
We do this, by the way, just in case you didn't know, we do this every show. So if you want to prep a little bit and have something before you come to the show, that's awesome. Just let you know.
It's finals week, Phil. It's finals week.
No,
Finals
and if you don't have one, that's fine. I don't blame you if you don't have one. Just don't make one up here at the last minute, and then it's.
This is actually something.
Like,
I do use this site, though. I do use this site.
So save it for next time. You can better prepare yourself. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Phil, I'm having.
We're short on time anyway, so that's
perfect.
Fine. The fewer people, the better. I knew Tom just because I could start to tell by last week when we were just talking to him that he was energetic, and Jen and Dina probably knew this already, that he is passionate, and I love that. So I kind of going into tonight, I knew this would probably be one of our longer episodes, but that's great. If I've got someone with energy and excited, and that just gets passed on to listeners, and that's good stuff. So I'm good with that.
Phil, I'm having issues with screen share, so if you want to share mine, or
just
I can
talk
just talk about it. Yeah.
I mean, most people listen to us audio and don't watch anyway. That's a new thing. So even if you show it, you still kind of have to explain it anyway. So that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. And then MJ, do you have listener comments and whatever?
I do.
Okay. All right. So let's do this. If everyone's ready.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Giddy up.
All right.
He says yes.
Okay.
Here we go. In 3, 2, meow.
All right. Well, welcome back. We're going to hit our weather fools. Brady, lead us through that, brother.
All right, guys. It's time for everyone's favorite part of the podcast. So Weather Fools is where we talk about some things that some people might have done that's a little silly when it comes to weather in the past week or two. They might have done something kind of silly. Phil, let's start with you. What was your weather fool for this week?
All right, so my weather fool for the week, and this really could apply to any winter storm, but just most recently we had a blizzard go through North Dakota and Minnesota, and Reed Timmer on Twitter. Reed actually is going to be a guest of ours in the spring. Reed just posted a picture that those of you watching on Stormfront Freaks Raw will be able to see this. But he posted vehicles getting towed out of the road in Alexandria, Minnesota at Blizzard Peak. And, of course, it shows a tow truck with, like a Toyota Prius or, something that obviously probably shouldn't be out in a flipping blizzard.
Blizzard.
Yeah, this is slurring. The beer.
How many have you had of those?
Should have had a Michelob. Should have had a
But it's my weather fool is no one in particular, but it's the people that continue to, even when it's forecasted that there's going to be a blizzard, there's going to be a ton of snow, and if you're out driving, you're going to be in a pile of crap, are still out there driving and getting stuck and creating business, obviously, for the tow trucks.
Well, that's people when people drive out in the middle of snowstorms. I've never understood that. Just stay at home. Get some hot chocolate, sit by the fire, watch a movie, Christmas movie. There's too many on this time of year. But all right,
it's the people. Hey, it's the people who don't shovel the snow off they only have that little spot where they can see through, and they have like 2 feet on the hood and 2 feet on the roof, and then it like flies back and hits you. Drives me nuts.
You know, never mind. That'll be a story for later. But anyway,
Okay.
Dina, what's your weather fool?
All right, I'm going to try to share my screen here, so hopefully.
You know, Maz isn't on video tonight, so he can't get us cracking up.
There it is.
Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bigger. So mainly, this is over in the UK, and I could show you at the bottom. Whoops, it's flipping over. So mainly, these people try to cross this bridge, and the tide gets really high 1 week every month, and then in November it gets really high. So these people cross this bridge. Look at this.
That's so nuts.
Well, where is this at?
This is in the UK.
Yeah,
this is,
so they don't have turnaround.
Mercia Island.
They don't have that in the UK. That's probably why.
It's crazy because then later they get stuck. I'm going to kind of slide through this. Look at this.
Oh my
gosh. What are they thinking?
I don't know. I had to turn but
I hope they've got biscuits in their car for
They
food.
got
He's
trying to
going
get to their
across the
favorite
sea.
fish and chips pub.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And then it's just this tiny little fence that kind
Look at
of
how long that is.
prevents them from floating away. And at the end, there's the guy. He's stuck. What did you expect?
He's in a
You know I get all
like,
bent out of shape about driving through flood. So,
Oh my gosh.
Not good.
all right.
Well,
That's
you know,
that's
turn
mine.
around, don't drown, people. Turn around. It's
That's
very
right.
simple.
we got to
Yes.
pass that on to the UK. They need to
Pass it. Turn around, don't drown. No.
All right, I'm done.
Don't drown.
So my weather fool this week. So there was I believe there was a video of a driver. This is in Staffordshire. I believe it's Vermont. There was a driver where there was heavy fog and there was a bunch of people on the freeway, and you could barely see in front of you. There was a dense fog advisory in effect, and he's going 110 miles an hour on the freeway. And I'm thinking, like, I'm scared to go 30 miles in heavy fog. This guy's going 110. Eventually, the police pulled him over. He didn't crash into anyone. So
Did you get confused?
it's just, I don't know, to be
I think
honest.
it was the Autobahn or whatever.
I don't know. At least, I mean, he was driving on the right side of the road, so that at least I'll give the
Was
guy
he
that.
drunk? Who knows?
Yeah,
That's
but
scary, though.
Yeah, and this was a pretty. This happened December 6th, so I don't
wow,
think they
really?
have they don't have I don't think they have whether he was drunk or not yet. But yeah.
All right. Well, we'll post all those that are postable. We'll post those on our internet webpage at stormfrontfreaks.com. We're going to jump to WX resources. These are just some great weather resources for you, whether they're apps, websites, equipment, whatever it might be, just things that we like to fill you in on that you may or may not be aware of. Jen, let's start with you. I think you've got a WX resource.
I sure do. So with all the wildfires recently, in the past few weeks, mine is ncweb.nwcg.gov. And this is an amazing site. I love this because if you just go type that into your browser and go straight to it, it lists all the active wildfires going on, where they are, when this little section right here has been updated. You can click on it and see actually what area has been burned, and it has so much detailed information. So depending on, like, we got smoke at the Weather Channel from some of the wildfires. I mean, it smelled like a campfire in the Weather Channel.
Horrible.
And it was really bad. And so it's amazing how even though a wildfire may not be in your city, but could impact you. So it's just a really good resource to have that we use.
What's
a
that
good one.
website again, Jen? Can you?
It's ncweb.nwcg.gov.
Nice. Okay. Well, we'll post that as well. The one that I'm going to show, the WX resource I have, and it's probably pretty common, and you guys are probably aware of this, but just recently with in the last couple of weeks, we've had not only winter weather warnings, but we've also had tornado warnings, all happening in different parts of the country. This is just the Storm Prediction Center website. which is www.spc.noaa, which is NOAA.gov. Their homepage, what's great about it is it shows not only a current activity map, and it might not be showing up perfectly for you guys, but it has a current activity map that shows the radar. It shows current watches issued by the SPC, and also the convective outlook for the day. But it also gives you access to 1, 2, and 3 day, and the 4 to 8 day convective outlooks as well, all in one page. You can access the current mesoscale discussions that might be going on, watches, forecast tools. There's at the bottom there are educational links for educational pieces that they provide. So it's a great one-stop shop, especially when it comes to storms, and that's kind of what our podcast is all about. It's really a neat little one-stop shop to kind of get all your information.
I love that site.
I do. Every day. On it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so cool little site. So we'll post that in our show notes on our website at stormfrontfreaks.com if you want to take a look at that. And then let's hit MJ. Do we have any listener questions or comments?
Yeah, we've got a couple of them. Came in on our mostly on our Twitter feed at OnlineFAC and at BKeithWX. Both made some comments about our show, episode 14. One of them talking about memories they had of their first weather radio back in 1988. And,
Nice.
And another one talking about the Accurite products. And then at Twitter Seekers, back a couple of weeks ago, was excited for Tom Niziol to visit us. So hopefully at Twitter Seekers is listening to the show tonight and got to hear all that wonderful information from Tom. So that's our listener comments.
Cool.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
guys, we want to, we certainly want to be able to not only give you a shout out on the show, but certainly answer any questions or comment on any of the questions or info that you have. We're also gearing up for season 2.0 as we go into 2017. And so certainly also want your feedback on the things you like about the show, things maybe you don't like about the show. Let us know again. And you can email us at questions@stormfrontfreaks.com, or feel free to catch us on Twitter or Facebook. So that does it for this episode of Stormfront Freaks podcast. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, tell your friends. And if you didn't like the show, go ahead and tell us. We really and truly, we want your feedback either way. We also want to answer your questions or discuss your comments on future shows, as I discussed earlier, as we're doing we're looking at finalizing some fun upgrades for 2017 that I think you'll like as well. Special thanks to our guest, Tom Niziol of the Weather Channel. And on the next episode next week, we have Dr. Elizabeth Austin as a guest.
Ooh.
She is the founder of Weather Extreme Limited Forensic Meteorology. So be ready to get your CSI on. She's also the author of the book Treading on Thin Air. And we actually have a copy that we're going to be able to give away to a lucky listener next week. And the show is actually next week, right? So normally we're a bi-weekly show, but due to technical difficulties, we waited a week to talk with Tom. We're going to be back again next week. So we have, with this show, we have 3 shows in the next 4 weeks. You're going to get your fill of the Stormfront Freaks.
It's our present to you. It's our Christmas present to you.
Hey, free stuff.
All right.
So for MJ, Brady, Maz, Dina, and Jen, I'm going to go ahead and signal the all clear, and we'll catch you next time.
Boom.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys.
There we go.
Oh.
Good job,
Awesome.
Jen. First.
Yay!
Yes.
That was
Love having
awesome.
you. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks. No, it was
That was
great.
fun.
I love Tom. Tom is so good.
Yeah, he is.
He's so enthusiastic. That's what I love about him.
Yeah, that's good. And those are the kind of people I want, on this show that are exciting and not just blah blah blah. I'm going to talk science. And science.
Damn, I'm buoyant.
Phil, do you guys know Brad Panovich?
Isn't he an Ohio State guy?
I'm not sure, but he's a chief in Charlotte, North Carolina.
He came to Ohio State for the Severe Weather Symposium.
Isn't he on Ohio? Doesn't he have an Ohio State background, Brady?
Might be.
Well, that would explain why he came.
Right. I think he does because I don't know him, but I saw him at the symposium at OSU. And, I'm familiar with him because obviously, he's got a lot of good stuff on social media and things of that nature.
Yeah, Ari and I are good friends with him. I think he would be a really good guest to talk about like Carolina weather and stuff like that. Just his experience in the industry. He's really good.
No, yeah, I think I saw him at the symposium and obviously it was really good there too. So I'm more than open to doing that if you've got a connection and want to reach out to him and obviously with Brady and Dina's Ohio State background, they're just more love in the group, I guess.
Wait, baby.
I can shoot him an email and then CC you on it too.
Okay, sounds good. Reminder, guys, I think I sent them the PDF of the book of Dr. Austin's book. So I think I threw that out there to everybody today. I'm like, I need to start reading this, obviously.
Yeah.
So I've got some good questions. So just a heads up, make sure grab your favorite reading device and start catching up on that. I know we won't have you next week, Dina.
Yeah.
Cry.
I know.
Tina.
I know. Today was a long day, boy.
I'm sure.
You got to go get some rest.
Well, yeah, you were like snot was flying out of your nose.
I did. I had snot. I swear to God, I thought it was like Turner
skydiving thing you were in.
I was waiting for slobber to come out of my mouth.
It probably was. I think I saw it a couple times when I was
watching it. I was like, I didn't care. I got to do it though.
He's like, at first I thought you were crying, but then I realized it was spit.
It was slobber, and then the air. He said it was about 120 miles an hour or something, but it goes shoots right up your nose because you have to keep your chin up. Yeah. And I'm like, boom.
Well, and they gave you earplugs. They should give you nose plugs that you could just
no kidding.
That's not what you want to do on a date if you're trying to look cool. That's what I say.
That was awesome.
You know what? My first date, I wore sports shorts. Okay.
How did that work out?
You'd have a ball doing it, but if you're trying to be sexy, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. How did that work out, man?
That's really neat, though.
Obviously, you're not with her still, so that.
Well, hey, you don't know that. You don't know that. Also,
yes, we do.
Yeah. It's a fair guess.
Come on, man.
All right, hey, you guys, I'm gonna.
Good night, Gina.
I got to get up in about an hour and a half. So
hey, I sent everybody an email to a quick little monkey survey because since we started the show, I haven't asked people, hey, what's working, what's not working, what do you think? Hey, if you guys can do that, I'd appreciate it. We're trying. MJ and I are trying to go. Okay, as we start our last show in December with Kelly Williamson of the Storm Wranglers is December 29th, but it will come out January, I think, 2nd or something like that.
Okay.
So that's our kind of first show for season 2, and we want to be able to kind of implement some new stuff. So I want to get your ideas and what's working, what's not working, all that stuff, so we can implement that in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, guys, I'm logging off.
Yep.
All right. Good night, Dina. Thank you.
Bye, Dina.
Hope for snow in Ohio,
guys.
For snow in Ohio. Come on. Do some snow days.
I'm going to scrap the
the
thing for now because it got late. So
all right,
go.
See you guys.
Good. We can do it next week if we need to. See you, Brady. See you, Matt. See you, Jen. You guys are awesome.
Bye,
Good
guys.
job tonight.
Good night.